The following video is for educational purposes only. Do not attempt to replicate any of the stories or betting strategies discussed in this video. If you have or know someone with a gambling addiction, please seek help immediately. Losing money, time, and myself. As a girl, all I knew was school and work. There was no time for fun. Italian girls didn't go out. I started working during school holidays at the age of 14 in factories. At 18, I started raising much needed funds for charities, and since then I've organized many charity events. Over the years, I became a trusted person with an amazing reputation. If you want anything sorted, go to Connie. In the early 1990s, I started my own payroll and bookkeeping business. By the early 2000s, I was elected president of the Carlton Traders Association. Then I started my own event company because I wanted to bring the new and very modern Italy to Melbourne, not the old Italy that doesn't exist anymore. This led to a business relationship with a con man who left me with more than $400,000 in debts. My credit cards were maxed to the hilt, so I stole money from a client for over 20 years to pay back the small business creditors. I got into such a depressive state that I turned to gambling for two reasons. One, to see if I could win enough money to get me out of the mess, and two, it was the only place I could forget about my troubles. Of course, it didn't work, and I lurched from one disaster to another. Over 4 years, I stole more than $6 million from my bookkeeping clients to pay off my credit cards, gamble, and pump funds into my events business. I was trying to reinvent myself. Who was I kidding? I brought Sophia Loren to Australia for a charity event, but this introduced me to another con man, and huge sums disappeared into his pockets. Hoodwinked again. It was like I had the sign "loser" on my forehead. To take away my pain, I'd play the pokies at the casino where there were no limits. I lost all track of time and money, but also myself. Who was Connie now? I lost my pride. I wouldn't borrow money to gamble, but I'd steal money to gamble, as if that was somehow more honorable. I had two personas. I could still appear in public as a successful and trustworthy businesswoman. No stress. I was a good actress. In private, I thought, what the hell have I got myself into? I was withdrawn and just wanted to curl up and disappear. I couldn't see past my own nose. I went to my general practitioner about my migraines, but that was the only help I ever sought. There was only one way this was going to turn out. I had a gut feeling I was going to get caught, and that's what happened in September 2018. I was served with papers, and that was when my husband and son first found out about my crime. All our accounts were frozen, and the legal process quickly escalated. I was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison, where I worked my butt off in the cafe and took on duties as requested. I made $8.95 a day using my skills. It was tough, not just for me, but for my whole family. I'm so lucky they all stuck by me. I have been out of prison for a year, and now I'm looking for employment. I'm upfront about my past, so of course I'm getting a lot of knockbacks. I see a gambler's help counselor regularly, and mostly talk about all these rejections because I still feel like a bit of a prisoner in my own head. I thought the stigma of being a gambler was bad, but the stigma of having been to prison is even worse. I can't go to the casino under the terms of my parole, and there's no way I want to go. I know I'm 99.9% not a gambler anymore, but also, you never know. I can now understand the addictions some people have with alcohol and drugs. I had that same sort of compulsion with gambling, but it's not an excuse. I had this big secret that was weighing very heavily on me. I was caught and served my sentence. While that's affected me in many negative ways, I feel that the heavy burden of secrecy has lifted, but not the shame. I can't hide. I've accepted what I've done after much soul searching and many sessions with a psychologist. I was a sucker and worked with some bad people. Still, I'm responsible for getting off the path my parents put me on, where you work hard to earn your own money. If you stick with the truth, you can never get caught out. Okay, so that was another interesting gambling addiction story. Now this one was one that I found on the internet that actually happened in real life. It wasn't just a story that I read on Reddit, for example. And as soon as I saw the headlines of a woman embezzling $6 million from her gambling addiction, immediately I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting, and there's definitely something that we can learn from her story. And that is the whole intent behind these gambling addiction stories videos. It's not that I'm trying to make fun of anyone or make anyone feel bad. It's none of that. The whole intent of these videos is for us to learn something, because maybe there is a type of perspective you can gain by listening to the mistakes that someone else has made. So take me, for example. I haven't gambled in 10 years, but I love to gamble. I love to gamble. If it's poker, card games, basketball, sports betting, anything. It doesn't matter what it is. I enjoy gambling so much because it's exciting for me. Even though I haven't been to a casino in 10 years, does that mean I've overcome a gambling addiction? Does that mean I'm okay and that I could just gamble responsibly? I don't know. Who knows? Maybe. But I won't know for sure unless I'm in that situation. And so I find it very valuable, not just for you guys, but for myself, to learn from the mistakes of other people. And what you'll really notice from this story is that a gambling addiction can occur in someone regardless of how successful or unsuccessful they are. Usually when you hear someone struggling with a gambling addiction, immediately you think that they're a bum, they're a loser, they're not successful, they're making poor decisions. But in this case, we're talking about a woman that was extremely successful. She had a successful client business, and it sounded like she was respected in her profession. And just because you're successful at your business, corporation, or day job, that doesn't mean that you are immune to the effects that a gambling addiction can have on your decision making. Now, there were a couple points in this story that I found rather interesting, or ones that I've seen before in the past in other people's stories. And I quickly noted one of them down, and it was that gambling is the only place where you can forget about your troubles. And this was a feeling that this lady, Connie, had, was that even though she had all this chaos going on, she had all this debt, she was stealing and gambling with her clients' money, whenever she was at the, I think she called it the pokey machines, or like the slot machines, all of her troubles just disappeared. They were out of sight and out of mind, and she could just zone out from the problems of her everyday life. And this is a common scenario that gamblers go through. They feel like their life is crumbling down around them, and you feel like there's so much pressure around you, whether it's the debt collectors, your credit card bills, or whatever is going on. You feel like gambling is your only way to escape, because it sort of puts you in a trance and it keeps you preoccupied. We don't have to think about all your problems in everyday life. Now, another point that I found rather fascinating was that Connie seemed like she was susceptible to con men for whatever reason. Or maybe she was just gullible, or she always believed whatever business proposition was put in front of her. Who knows? It seemed like she was easily taken advantage of. And she had this strange description of being hoodwinked again, which is rather unfortunate because she was already going through financial turmoil. Now, another thing that she said that was interesting was that she is 99.9% not a gambler anymore, but you never know. And this phrase spoke volumes to me, as that's something that I think about a lot. Pretty much, maybe not every day, but pretty frequently I have this thought come up in my mind. And it's that I don't really play poker anymore. I don't really gamble too much anymore. And I don't bet on sports or basketball anymore. But again, you never know. You never know what could happen in the future. You never know what poor decision you could make. You never know when you would zig where you could have zagged. And all of a sudden, your gambling compulsion is taking control all over again. And finally, another interesting point that Connie was talking about was how she understood the parallels between a gambling addiction and someone that has a drug or alcohol addiction. And now she understands when that compulsion takes over. But the only thing that's sort of more dangerous here when it comes to gambling is that a gambling addiction is something you can't see on the outside. You can't see it physically. Whereas if you have someone who is an alcoholic, for example, you can see when they're physically drunk, where they're slurring their words or they can't walk properly. You can see that in real time. And the same thing with someone that has a drug addiction. You can see the physical abuse that their body is going through. But a gambling addiction, it's all internal. It's all mental. It's like an internal sickness. And it's so dangerous because your friends, your family, and your peers around you, they have no idea that you're struggling because you don't see anything on the outside. You just see normal Connie, business as usual. Doesn't seem like anything's bothering her. But deep down, this lady was really suffering. She was really struggling. And that's what makes a gambling addiction so dangerous. So that pretty much wraps it up, as this was a super interesting gambling addiction story that went all the way up to $6 million, which is just crazy. So if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful in some way, please let me know in the comment section down below. And if you want to watch another gambling addiction story video, you can watch that right here.